Hello and welcome to High Scores, High Stakes. With me, your host this week, Cardinal Smith. Yes, it's a bit unusual, but also welcome my co-host today.
Good evening, Cardinal. It's Tomahawk here. I'm really happy on two fronts because I am back recording, and also we are back doing our Game of the Month episodes. We're finally getting July's episode done. This sounds really bad when you say it like this. We put out the weekly content, but we can't seem to do an additional record once a month. But we're playing catch up. We're figuring this all out. But good to be back. Really good to be back.
Good to see you. And Tom, when you have babies, that tends to happen,
Exactly.
or
That's it.
full-time jobs and
Podcast
such.
paternity is over. Now I am back on the content train.
The hard grind begins now. The
That's
roll
it.
into season 4 begins soon. But I know it's coming. It's on. It's not far over the horizon now. But today, as you say, we are on a Game of the Month episode. But before we get there, let's just remind our viewers and listeners where you can find High Scores, High Stakes. Yes, the socials. Unlike Lava, I'm not going to list every single social medias that you can find us on, but we do have a website in highscoreshighstakes.com where everything's there. And Lava keeps posting little articles there too. It's great. But you can find us YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, X, Threads, the Mark Zuckerberg one, the new Twitter one, the Blue Sky, everywhere. Instagram,
Yeah.
TikTok,
Oh,
you
if,
name
if
it,
if there's an outlet, we're probably on it,
100%.
posting regularly or irregularly.
And there's different content on each of those social medias as well. It's not just
That's it.
one post per thing.
You
You're
have to
always
keep
posting.
the algorithm guessing. That's my thought.
Look at
But we haven't
this.
blown up yet. But there we are. We'll see what happens.
High Scores, High Stakes has a number of highly qualified social media managers, which just knock it out of the park in their respective fields. Fair play to Instagram, am I right? The Instagram manager.
That's it. He's
Yeah,
he's a top quality content machine,
he is.
wherever
He
he
does
may be.
whoever it is. Um, but find us out, get in contact with us, or follow us, whatever you like. We are out there as the internet's only gaming podcast. Thank you. So, moving on, we are on to, as you say, July's Game of the Month episode. Do we want to announce what that game is?
Yes, I think so.
Okay. You might tell if you can see I'm wearing a t-shirt, and I don't know if the text is the wrong way around because recording, but it's Final Fantasy VII Remake. Important little word there with the remake. So we are looking at Square's new tech on Final Fantasy VII, the original that came out in 1997 or thereabouts, many moons ago, has been revamped as of 2020, and we have both played it.
Yes. More recently than others, Final Fantasy VII Remake, personally for me, was the first time I've ever played a Final Fantasy game in its
Wow.
completion. Um, like we'll get into sort of my thoughts of it as we sort of beat through the story on it, but yeah, just a hell of an endeavor. I think I just remember texting you guys in the group chat as I'm clearing these chapters and just going like, I've done this, I've done this. Why am I fighting this? Like, what's going on? And it's just you can kind of tell I've this may be this game at the time. I may have been a bit young for this game. Was kind of slipped through my grasp at this point, but the remake just came out at the right time, and figured why not? Let's feature it.
Now that you're 17 and you got time on your hands, you can, no, but and it's great, and I'm glad you picked it up. I know it was maybe FOMO that made you pick it up, because we knew we were going to record this episode. Um, Lava didn't manage to make it to the end of the game, so he doesn't want any spoilers. Hence, he's not here tonight. But let's get into the actual discussion now of our high scores, high stakes July game of the month. And here we are. So, our Final Fantasy VII Remake game of the month. We played it, we've completed it, and we're here to talk all about it. Now, before we do, I'm just going to say Final Fantasy VII, the OG is, I think, my all-time favorite game, or it certainly had the biggest impact on my childhood. That
Yeah.
you sort of remember it and nostalgia and all that, and it's like, wow, this is great. Essentially, it was the first Final Fantasy I played, so it stuck with me. But I was so excited for this remake. When they announced it was happening, I was full of trepidation. It's like, why is the word remake there and not
Yeah, yeah.
remaster? But and we'll, you know, let's start talking about that Tomahawk. Why?
Well, like, it's because I have this as a note here because remake. We've talked about like remakes and stuff on previous episodes. Like, it has this nearly like not a derogatory kind of term, but as I've learned, as especially as I was playing this game, it's not so much a remake, but it's a reimagining. But to call it a reimagining is only going to trigger so many fanboys of the franchise as well. So at heart, it is a remake, but there's so many more like layers and other bits and pieces that we'll sort of touch on as we sort of dive through the story on it. But I just sat and had a look through it because I never played this and I kind of wanted to get an idea of the history and the context of what I was getting myself into. I didn't know that this game was originally announced in 2015. This actually was like 5 years worth of, you know, hype by the time it got to the PlayStation 4. It actually even went further back that it was originally the talk of a remake was announced alongside a 789 trilogy for the PlayStation 2. That's sort of
Really?
early doors what they were planning on doing.
Well,
They ditched that because they were working on Final Fantasy 13 at the time as well and thought that's a bit more of a priority than rehashing the older titles really.
I remember you go back as far as that. I remember early internet memes about if, in case of bankruptcy at Square or Square Enix, remake Final Fantasy VII or just
It's always
re-release
their
it.
ace in the hole, yeah. That's always
Yeah, yeah.
gonna be good there.
Financial boosted needed. Break it out. Here we go.
Well, this is it. Like, it's such an iconic title anyway. And it shows like because I had a wee look at a couple of the figures in 3 days. The first 3 days of the remake coming out in April 2020, it sold 3.5 million copies in 3 days.
Which is
Like,
big numbers. I mean, you're talking about sales in the height of lockdown too.
well, this is
You
it. It's
know,
pure nostalgia. I think it's like it's. You could always say that it's perfectly timed, but they've obviously got a time frame of that locked in. But the pandemic can
sure.
nearly help it because you've got these guys who are all at home with their consoles or are buying consoles specifically for lockdown, and it's a nostalgia thrill, really. And we're kind of, I think by September 2023 we're looking at about 7 million copies total thereabouts anyway. So the game still has a place this day and age as a relevancy.
Yeah, yeah. And I think it was maybe received. I don't know. I got the impression it was received better than I thought it would be because, as I said, I was still full of trepidation about, like, would they change anything? Then surely it's going
Yeah,
to be
yeah.
worse or something. It's like, what are they going to change? And there was a bit of anticipation, bit of excitement about that. But that is the build up to it. Now it is here. It's out in the open. We have played it. Can I tell you my first impressions?
Yes, yes, please do.
Okay,
Absolutely.
so our view points of view are going to be different. But the the fact that it opens with Cloud arriving on a train as part of a eco terrorist group here to destroy stuff. Spoilers. It's the very start of the game. It's not a spoiler, but that was like a number of just pixelated blocks on the original jumping around. Some purple and yellow blocks was supposed to
Oh
be
yeah.
my main character. Um, so the graphics were insane on the remake. It was done
Oh yeah.
so well. And then straight away the fighting. You fight some just random grunt soldier straight off
Yeah,
the
yeah, yeah.
bat, and and that was identical to the original. The music, the timing, the opening scene was different, but it was just nostalgia pouring out of your
That's it. I
veins
mean,
at that point.
got this idea because I played the demo for it, which is basically just that tutorial chapter where you're at the reactor and getting sort of the core movements of like the character and everything done and dusted there. But yeah, I can see how I can see where a fan would just like going. The music, all the beats are exactly the same. Like that they've ditched the turn-based combat for the active battle system, which is so great in sort of in a modern era of gaming, at least anyway. And you
Well,
build up to your AP and stuff.
how did you find that? Because you've just come off the back of you play loads of games and you played like Rise of Rodin and Bloodborne and all the
Yeah,
games
yeah,
you.
yeah.
I know you play 3 games a week, but you know what?
Well, this is it. I mean, I like a turn-based game as much as anybody. Like, I was really, really big into Sea of Stars, kind of in tandem with me playing this as well. But to kind of just be able to, be hitting heavy and light attacks, and you're building up your ability to then use magic attacks and stuff like that. I thought that was brilliant. But I think it needed that. Or if I had to sit and play that in an Unreal 4, Unreal 5 engine as a turn-based game, I think that would just drive me crazy. So great choice to do that. And I don't know if that's a more recent Final Fantasy edition for that active time
To be honest, it
system.
was new to me.
Okay.
I didn't see that in. I don't want to digress too much. Final Fantasy 15 was maybe a little active timing. I didn't play a lot of it because I'm sorry, Final Fantasy 15 fans. I got bored. I just found it dull. But
Okay.
it was more open world, sort of real time fighting. Final Fantasy 7 was so much smoother and slicker, the remake, sorry, than 15. I found, and to be honest, I feel like they've handed passed that on into Final Fantasy 16, which is very similar in ways, almost
Okay.
bigger and grander, but they just like, okay, we've got a good system here, let's use it again.
Yeah, 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 absolutely.
But in terms of your first thoughts, that you're coming at it fresh, right? Or you played a demo, you bought the game, you're starting off, you're thinking, what the hell's this? What's it all about? What were you thinking?
I was just I pretty much just had it in mind of going play it. Don't really think too much about it because I was very much I think I got to a certain point at least anyway in the game. I was just like, this is JRPG. It's going to be anime coming out of my ears. It may or may not have a plot that's going to make no sense to me, or it's going to have several plots that are all going to come together at some stage or another. I didn't know what I was getting into sort of as a whole. I kept sort of trying to play this over the last couple of years, and I think once we had this locked in as our one of our game of the month games, I was like, make a point to finish this irregardless. So, uh, yeah, I very much went into it as a just get it done. You might like it kind of mentality.
That's a positive approach, right?
Yeah.
You might like it. You don't go in
Well, that's
heaping
it.
straight off the
It
bat.
was on PlayStation Plus, so I thought I've
Yes.
nothing lost, nothing gained. If I don't like it after a couple of chapters, I can kind of just bin it and chip away at it eventually. What I think that first couple of chapters, like I love a good context and I love a good like data dump in games, and this sort of does give you that, but then drip feeds you more information as you progress through it. And um, excuse me. Oh, yeah, no, I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed the beats. I enjoyed the pacing of the game actually for a lot of it at least anyway.
Well, and let's get into that. So let's get into the game now and those beats you mentioned. So Final Fantasy 7, if you've never played it, or you have played it, it's just a reminder. Straight off the bat, you are playing as Cloud Strife, a blonde ex-soldier with an oversized sword who has appears to have been recruited or a mercenary for this eco group called Avalanche, led by Barrett, with a few other team members, and they appear to be going in to blow up a reactor in this city of Midgar. So, Tom, I don't know if you have beat points you want to talk to about that, but
Like the start of it's very just the NPCs. You got like Barrett, Jesse, Biggs, and I've lost his last name as well. Wedge.
Michael
They all just
Sheen.
sit there
Oh,
and just
sorry.
run. They all just run off, and then you're left to kind of do all your tutorial bits. So you don't really get any sense of the. We kind of get this idea that Barrett doesn't like you, that you're just a body, you're just
Yeah.
a mercenary, you're additional muscle. But he didn't. It seems like he doesn't really want you there to begin with. So you're not getting an awful lot about these characters. You're just kind of getting, oh, this is the merc, this is the soldier. He knows what he's doing. We're just going to go off and do our own thing. Um, so it's kind of hard to form any sort of opinion about any of the characters at this point. Wedge is always this kind of like happy-go-lucky character. So nearly every time they ditch you, he just leaves you with this big thumbs up, and he's like, "See you later."
There's almost a coldness to it. Barrett
Yeah.
doesn't want you there, and also Cloud, or your main protagonist, is a little aloof himself, or a little standoffish, and
It's a payday at the end of the day. He says many
exactly.
times, it's like, I'm just here to get paid. Like, it doesn't. He has no stake in this, no political affiliation to what's going on between Avalanche, Shinra, or any of the reactors. Really, he just seems to want the payday at the end of the day.
And then I will say, going into the remake, I wasn't sure when the actual game would end, but I'll get that to the end. Because obviously the original is just one game, one big long game.
Ah, yeah, this is like one of. This is like essentially each disc as we go. So remake is going to be disc one, quote unquote. Rebirth will
I
be
s-
disc two, and then re-energize or whatever they're going to call it will be disc three.
it really isn't. That would be logical.
Yeah.
What I would say, this goes up to the end of Midgar. Spoilers. Um, that is not a big part of the first disc of the first game. Like,
Oh, okay.
this is fleshed out, right? And in a good way, right? They have, because Midgar is like the biggest city in the world, and kind of like the head of Shinra is all here, but it's half an hour and you're done in the original,
Oh,
of
okay. It's
this
very
section.
quick then.
Yeah, maybe an hour. I'm maybe overstating that. I'm not a speedrunner, but it is certainly larger. But I digress. The bomb mission, reactor, whichever number of reactor it is, where the
This is reactor
sucking up that live
one.
stream. Reactor
This is
one, good
reactor
place to
one.
start.
Yeah, yeah.
And there's 7 or 8 of these things, and they're gonna, the point is to blow this up, to send the message to Shinra, this evil corporation that rule Midgar, uh, and basically control energy throughout the world. And
Yeah, their source in Mako, which is like the what fuels the planet basically, and they have this idea that Mako is the lifeblood of the planet, and they're taking it away and it's killing the planet. So they're like, oh, we'll blow it up, and that way they can't use it, so it's going to help us in the long run. But yeah, so like if you're not doing tutorial bits, you're just kind of learning how to work the mechanics of the game. So you go between yourself and Barrett and work his range attacks, and we do eventually work ourselves down to the reactor, and boils it down to sort of two conversation choices. You could set the timer for 20 minutes or 30 minutes, and Barrett gives you a bit of a bit of sass regardless of what choice you pick on that one then. But this leads us sort of into the first boss, and it kind of gives you this is like, right, you've learned all the mechanics here, let's just get going. You've got the sentinel spider boss. um
yeah, the first boss.
straight into that. I just thought it was like, all right, okay, we're just gonna give us a giant mechanical scorpion that can traverse the walls, the floor, the ceiling, and will hit you with electric attacks. But Barrett does the damage of like 2 hit points per like second. It's a slog off the bat, really, and you're only at level one.
You suck. Like,
Hmm.
you just suck right at the start. You're low level, low power. To be honest, I was like, I'm not really sure how to use Barrett. I'm switching between characters. Okay, one impact is Barrett is like a long range attack, right? Whereas Cloud can't touch him if the spider scorpion is on the walls and things. It wasn't like that in the original. The scorpion stayed stationary, was on the ground, and you didn't need to switch characters. You just controlled all both um,
Yeah.
different combat type, but it didn't matter what range. Cloud could still attack regardless.
Exactly. Yeah.
Um, but yeah, the Scorpion as the first boss was, I thought, quite challenging in the remake.
Oh
It
yeah, it fully
took
just
me a
went, get on
while.
with it. There we are. It took me good 2 or 3 attempts at least. And it's not like a case of, oh, you have this done in 5 minutes. It's a full like 15-minute boss fight, 20-minute boss fight.
Yeah. I think the original allowed you to select 10 minutes for the bomb timer.
Oh, okay. So real short time then. But that's
Um,
it. I mean, so like it gives you that
which
option. I think if you go for a 20-minute boss fight, you have to get that boss fought in that within that window and then
yeah,
escape before the reactor blows up. I kind of just went with a 20-minute one because I was like, I want to impress these guys. And then Barrett's
I'm
just
a
like, oh,
badass.
20 minutes, 20 minutes. Huh. Are you sure you need that much? So we blow up the Sentinel, we escape the reactor, and then we're kind of just caught in the aftermath of the bombing on the main plates of Midgar. We're kind of trying to get to the escape route. All of the bits of the reactor sort of blowing up in the street. Everyone's a bit of panic, and Cloud's kind of walking around going, "All right, whatever. I don't care. I wasn't there. Don't know what you're talking about."
Where's my
Um,
pay?
well, that's it. And then this is where we get a first sort of look that Cloud maybe isn't quite on the same mental page as everybody because this is one of the first. I don't know how they maybe portrayed this at all, or if they did in the OG, where he starts to get all these chronic headaches and visions of people who may or may not be there. Um, and I
Yeah,
know this is where this, like, if you play in the game, you have the subtitles. The game introduces Sephiroth pretty much from the get go. Now I'm very much aware of who Sephiroth is, even before booting up this game. I know he's the big bad of the whole game and has these evil intentions, but has this relationship with Cloud anyway. But he's always constantly whispering in his ear about, like, you know, impending doom, basically. So Cloud nearly has this moment of clairvoyance, snaps out of it, and then it's just like, nope, let's get to the train station, let's get back to the slums, and then that's where we pick up next bit of gameplay in it.
yeah, and that's on the next beat. But that little mental visions and connections and words from Sephiroth was totally new, and that was the first time it really diverges. Not in a bad way, but it's like, holy cow, we're meeting Sephiroth or seeing
Like
or hearing
straight
about
away,
Sephiroth now.
yeah.
Yeah. He's obviously going to be a much bigger player here in this early part. Uh, I guess Cloud did have like snapping headaches and stuff going on in the original. When you plant the bomb in reactor one, it's like the screen sort of flashes white and Cloud's
Okay.
holding his head and stuff like that. So it was there, and I guess really they've just maybe fleshed it out to include what's going on in Clyde's mind. Maybe.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It gives it a better sense of his relationship, I suppose, with Sephiroth, because they do talk about it later on in the game that he was the soldier that everyone wanted to aspire to be, and that's sort of where Cloud gets his motivation to go and serve, basically. So, but we get
Yeah.
to that. We do sort of learn that that gets sort of fed, drip fed to us as we get through the game. Then, but I think the
So
next part is then we go through. We're in the Sector 7 slums. This is the center of operations for this Avalanche cell, at least anyway. At this point, this is where we get meeting Tifa. This is the first time we meet her. She's an old friend of Cloud's anyway. Cloud, they grew up together in the slums at a very young age. She then basically says to Cloud, "I can't quite pay you, but let's go and do a whole rake of side missions that are completely essential to the story, and I will then pay you the rest of the money that you're owed, and we will call it even then."
let's just snap back. We do meet Aerith, right? In the on the way back, the way
Yes,
uh,
she's the flower
the
peddler.
flower
Like she's
girl.
only a
Yeah.
flower girl. Yes.
Yes, so I've always been confused. Now she's called Aerith. In the original, she was called Eris. Maybe I just pronounced it wrong, but
Okay.
But we meet her on
Yes,
the
that's
way
right.
back. She offers you a chance to buy a flower, but you've got yeah, and stuff like that. And there's these things that whisper around you,
Oh, the mysterious ghost figures, which
ghosty
just
boys. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
they just appear as and when it suits them throughout the game.
And that's interesting. We'll touch on that later. But yes, Sector 7 slums.
Because
Huge,
this is the
much.
first. It was the first time sort of going through this. I was like, yes, I guess it's going to try and start showing you like all the side missions and how that like works and throughout the game and building a rep as a mercenary. Um, So I think a couple of them are just basically go round up cats. You go and replace water filters for the residents, and then it's basically just pest control, and it's more combat mechanics than we're learning about the game as we go. The cat side mission just does get me every time because I think to myself, "Oh, I'm just gonna should just be able to skip this," and I'm going, "No, it's a key objective. You can't advance the story until it's done."
Oh my
So there
goodness.
we are.
Yeah. Welcome to Final Fantasy, just in
Oh
general.
yeah.
They're going to throw that at you. The, I don't remember any cat side quests in the original whatsoever. Um,
No, I believe that. I very much imagine if this section is as short as you say it is in the original, I would say that this is barely a fleeting moment.
yeah.
I would say
But
it's just basically the next. We go straight to the next story mark anyway.
well, essentially, like, but the slums in the remake, the Sector 7 slums, are really quite large. There's a space, and there's loads of NPCs and
Hmm.
characters around. And uh, big Jesse, Biggs, and Wedge are much bigger characters in this remake. Much
Oh
more
yeah,
screen time. Um, I mean, Jesse's flirting with you throughout this time with at any given moment. As you say, Wedge is giving you a thumbs up, and I think it's Biggs just looks like Michael Sheen to me in every
yeah. He's
scene.
always just like you seem kind of cool. We could be friends, but I'm just gonna like
Yeah,
maintain professional relationship with you. Like
absolutely.
yeah, like we get a little bit more into them as we sort of are in the slums. They're kind of all doing their like neighborhood watch, and they're like trying to rope you in. And for there for the betterment of the slums, at least anyway.
And Avalanche seems like a ingrained in this community
Oh yeah,
almost. Like this is a sort of whispered uprising kind of. Everyone knows about it, but they're not going to talk to Shinra about it, kind of thing. And
yeah. No, that's it. So it's funny because so we do a lot of these side missions. We get paid. Uh, then Avalanche go and have their little secret mission or secret meeting in Seventh Heaven in the bar that Tifa owns. This kind of leaves Cloud then to kind of meander through the bar just to kind of kill time. So I think there's a whole bunch of mini game options in there. You can change the jukebox. You can play darts. Um, yeah, like it's quite good. It just
yeah,
kind of gives you a little bit more. Like I may as well just pour a drink and wait for them then. So where do we go there? Yeah, so
I have a distinct memory
basically,
of Tifa asking if I wanted a stiff one, but at the bar. But that's another matter. Maybe that was a dream. Moving
it's such
on.
a random moment in the game because like you're there just to kind of meander through the bar and then they leave or they come back and basically say we don't need you anymore. You can go. You get paid, you go to leave. Nobody wants to really talk to you beyond that. But as you leave, some mercenaries start to gather around the bar and they're looking for the man with the machine gun arm. And you kind of say, never seen him, but you take these boys on this merry chase and you go and have a fight with them and you beat them all up and you get a bit of XP from it at least anyway. Um, this then sort of you're going
Good
to
guy Cloud.
yeah, that's it. Good guy Cloud. He's a bit of a conscience anyway. If even if he doesn't really care about their end game. So Cloud goes off. He's like, right, I'm gonna go to bed. I'm gonna leave this for the next morning. He's then kind of accosted by Jesse in his room, who has then just said, I need a favor. I need to go to the surface, but I need you to come with me as a bit of muscle. So I know that this is another
Yes.
beat in the story that was kind of fleshed out for the remake because it gives Jesse's character a bit more substance and a bit more background as well. If we go
I mean,
and
this isn't a beat that's fleshed out. This is a beat that didn't exist.
oh, did it not
Um,
exist altogether? Yes, so this is an entire motorbike level. So we have Jesse, Wedge, and Biggs all on motorbikes. We are fighting off Shinra soldiers. Just swipe left, swipe right, use your special moves. We are then ambushed by Roche,
a
another
chap.
soldier.
Yes.
Yeah. He just
It,
decides like, "Oh, I'm just gonna get involved. This looks like a good bit of fun." Like he's so
like it's a bit
random.
of
He just
sport.
it just felt it felt shoehorned in because you fight him, you blow up his bike, and then he's just like, "Oh, I'll get you," and he just
Damn, I'm impressed, but I'll get you.
he just disappears again, and then you don't see him till later on in the section anyway. But yeah, it's
I,
like
I think he was purely there to give you to separate the normal Shinra grunts to a sort of qualified soldier. Soldiers like a class within Shinra, right? Where it's sort of there's first, second,
yeah,
and third class Shinra or soldiers, and I feel like that he's just there to be a bit of a boss, but also a bit of a these people are better, and you're going to meet
yeah, yeah.
some of
But
them
they all
pretty
seem to be
annoying.
they all seem to be not in any kind of army or regiment or anything like that because Roche seems to just operate completely independent and off his own back.
It's
So
just on a motorbike by the side of the road.
well, this is
Like
it. I
what's he
mean, he
do?
was quite cool. He's a cool character design, and he does have a good boss fight later on. To be fair, but once he's dispatched this first phase, essentially, we do get to it's Jesse's parents' house and
Yes.
they take Biggs and Wedge into the house, and he's chatting to their mom, and she goes, "Right, Cloud, you're gonna sneak in and you're gonna steal my dad's ID pass, so I can steal more explosives for this next job that we've got coming up." And it's quite a small section in this, but it gives you a bit more context into like her background and her motivations and stuff. I think that she's trying to be an actress, but really she's a political or ecological activist, really. So
Yes.
bit of a tangent, but it gives you that. I suppose the game's trying to add in that little bit of a oh, here's Jesse, but it's only Jesse. We don't really get anything from Wedge and Biggs at any point in the game, if I'm honest.
I, yeah, yeah. Other than their little interactions with you,
Yeah, yeah.
as we've discussed, thumbs up all the time. But they come as a band. They are just the other members of Avalanche, I guess.
Exactly, yeah.
Um,
So after that little section, there's also that's the stealth option where you have to sneak through the house and not creak any of the floorboards. Just as
of
nearly as
course.
like feels like a little mini game nearly. That we just go straight to the next section where it's like, right, uh, Wedge, Biggs, Cloud, I need you guys to provide it or just make a distraction while I sneak in and steal all this explosive material. So basically, just go in and start a fight and start
Cause chaos.
shooting or like start attacking Shinra guards, dogs, and then our new best friend comes and decides, well, no, I'm here for round two, so we have another boss fight
Ding ding.
with Roche, and he is really good as a boss fight. I think he's got great line delivery, and it's all about like action catchphrases nearly.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
again, I imagine this is all completely shoehorned in from the original, then just to flesh out and give a bit more action into the
Yeah, he
game.
didn't exist in the original
Not
at
at all,
all.
okay.
Yeah,
So
we're
I
going to
think,
keep saying this because
yeah,
it's funny.
but
But it was like a welcome kind of fight with Shinra soldiers and stuff because it totally changed. Well, it changes the pace. You're doing a stealth mission, then you're doing an anti-stealth mission. You're doing anything but stealth.
yeah, yeah.
Um, but it was a pretty tricky boss fight. It took me another go, if I'm honest.
It was always the dogs that got me because they just they can swarm you.
Yeah,
And yes, you can lock onto one but deal damage to a lot of them. But if you run out of steam, they can swarm you and do a lot of damage at one time because they can all attack at the same time. That
Yeah.
always caught me out. So it is dire straits. I think everyone does get surrounded, and you do have like a duel at some point with Roche, but then we are rescued by another avalanche cell, and they're kind of looking at us, going, "What are you doing here? We were coming to cause havoc here." So we disappear. We come back to the slums.
Yeah.
The slums are under attack
Oh,
by
goodness sake.
the. We're back with the mysterious specters, I believe the game calls them. They're attacking the residents. They're attacking the bar. Everyone's just having a bad old time with it, if
The
memory serves correctly.
whispers.
The whispers, okay.
Sorry, that's a spoiler. Red 7 takes Red 13
What
tells us
what
that
I
later.
will say about this, what I will say about this before we go into a bit in depth of that, we did touch on this as well. Jessie likes to sort of have a bit of a flirt with Cloud, and she's very much like,
She
"Oh well,
does.
I want to thank you. Are you going to be available tomorrow night?"
Yeah.
Now,
Yes, I
she
am.
is not the only female
Oh,
character who will then flirt with Cloud Strife. What I will say about this is Cloud Strife has zero riz. He just, I don't think he's aware that these women are falling over him for him.
he
And he's
his
just like,
no
I'm all about the
reaction.
mission. He just doesn't, he's oblivious to it. I
Maybe
don't
that's
get it.
maybe that is the Riz, as you say. Maybe that's the play. You know, he's just
The stone faced, stoic man. Yeah, that's always a great angle.
is there yeah, you're staying in Sector 7 slums, and I think you're staying beside Tifa's room
Yeah,
at
you're next door
the
to Tifa's room at
yeah.
like the it's like a motel type look anyway, and she stays in like a sorority house. It's all a bit bizarre. It's like the setting just doesn't like. But anyway,
It's hard to keep up with.
that's
Yeah.
it. So we come back. Sector 7 is under attack. All the specters are attacking sort of everyone. They're attacking the bar. Uh, it is just attacks in waves. You basically then just have to
They're everywhere.
outlast them. Essentially, they
Yeah.
are everywhere. They don't take a great deal of damage, but they do replenish pretty heavily. I think at one point I'm fighting Mysterious Spectre, Zed, and then AA spawns as well. So
It's like
they do
this.
that. Whether it's a timed event or what, we're fighting waves and waves and waves of these guys. Then, um, in the midst of this, Jesse and Wedge both get injured. So begrudgingly, Barrett is like, "Well, we need another set of hands for this next job. We're gonna go blow up Reactor 5." So this is the first time we've got Tifa, Barrett, and Cloud all in one party.
Now we're talking.
And then Biggs, being Biggs, just kind of goes, "I'll meet you at some point, and I'll have gear for you." And then he just disappears. He just then goes off, does his own thing. That then brings us nicely enough into the next section, whereas we're all getting the train back into sector 5 proper, and
Must
then
be.
a
Yep.
big scanner from Shinra in the train flags everyone up as being uh Avalanche associates, or some people of interest. So straight away, we're not getting an easy chapter here. It's another jump off the train, fight a whole load of hordes of enemies, and make our way to the reactor the long way round. So we've got to go through the train tunnel all the way through to the reactor itself. Then,
Man, it's a trek. And
do you
this
know what though? Like,
is yeah, go on.
I do I know that this is sort of what these games are about. It's like dungeon crawls essentially, and then the difficulty will get progressively harder as we get to the next boss or the next set piece as well. I don't think these games can do they do storytelling really well, but they don't do the storytelling in walking gameplay. It's all in cutscenes and stuff like that. Whereas the gameplay is going to be purely on based on for the fighting side of things.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean that seems spot on. Um and this is on par with the original as well. So this is Jesse in the original has tries to make a special pass card for Cloud,
Yeah,
which doesn't quite work out. Flags on the scanner on that train, they all have to jump off. fight boys, go through the train tunnels.
Well, that's it. And
Seems
then basically, like all the maps are done as like figure eights nearly, or all looped and interlocked that way. So we do an awful lot of going to what a location to go pick up an item to go back on ourselves. We then have to go up and do. We can't go all the way up, so we have to go through the plates essentially. If I remember correctly, we have to do. You have to turn off the sun lamps, which actually provide fake sunlight to the slums below, so you can pass through
oh yeah,
safely through all of the maintenance areas of the plates, the bits in between the plates at least anyway. So we do that. A few more hordes of enemies, all sort of low level Shinra, like grenadiers or assault troops and stuff. We do eventually meet Biggs, who just appears and goes, "I've got you some grappling hooks. I'll see you later."
coming through clutch there, Biggs. Cheers.
That's it. Um, so yeah, we fire on through that. We then work our way through the reactor. It's essentially a similar beat to what it was at the very start. We're just a bit more clued in. We're just kind of having to go the long way around here. So it's a lot of lifts, going down levels, moving around, navigating that way, and then we get to the next reactor that we're going to blow up. We set the bomb. That is no
Here we go.
problem. Acqu- yes, so I remember this
Hmm.
now. It's all a lot of this is like interlocking with cutscenes that we're getting. Shinra know that we're here. Shinra know that like something's up, but they're letting this play
Yeah.
out. And they're talking about this weapon that's in development. Let's get it ready to go for them, and let's give them a nice surprise. So we do get the card pretty much at the first level, and every level that we progress gives us a new terminal that we can access with this card, and it gives you the option to dump a missile launcher, or it gives you an ability to dump shields or do something like that.
Yes, and
And
that's having an
yeah,
impact on the upcoming fight.
that
Is
upcoming
it?
boss fight. So it gives you
Yeah.
four, like I think it's four levels. If we go through each horde of enemies that way, you get to then take off something from this weapon. So the weapon's going to be developed, the weapon's going to be deployed regardless, but it's what fighting chance do you want to give yourself? And I don't
What?
really think it makes any difference. It's either you're either going to have shield debuffs or you're going to have long range weapons taken away. So it's whatever way is going to match your fighting style, really. I kind of just went boop, boop, boop. I'll figure it out when we get there.
I don't. Yes, I'm not too sure what this means, but take it
So
off.
this is, I think, we have our first sort of meeting with Heidegger, the Shinra head of security. He's kind of the big one of the big bads. Seems to be all about we need to show force, and this is how we do it with big, massive machines that blow stuff up.
That's it.
So
That's what the people need.
we get to our last sort of checkpoint. We know that the weapons are like going to be deployed basically in the next room. Um, and then this is when I met with the airbuster,
The
and I hated this
airbuster.
boss. I hated this boss so much because it took forever, and I kept dying as Cloud and Barrett to the point where I was Tifa punching a robot,
Just punching a robot.
just
Uh, That's
punching a robot continually.
that's what
But
she
there we are.
does.
That's it. She does it very well. I will give it that. But it's a couple of phases. Like I think we fight them as a trio. Then we get separated because the stands in the middle of like a junction, so you have to get them on three different fronts. And then the third phase, it is basically just in front of you, and you just have to lay into it with every weapon that you have. Really, I think I did eventually beat it with a Tifa uppercut. So you know
See, you were slagging it off there, and now you just
that's
realize,
it.
boom,
Oh no, she
one big
she
uppercut.
comes up at the end. She's very good. So big disaster. This
It is
airbot.
funny though. The optics of just like punching
Oh
a
yeah,
robot
the
is
just punching everything that moves is a great method of defense, really. So this airbuster has gone down, is blown up. Cloud's kind of caught in the middle of all this, and he
yes.
falls. He falls off he falls off the
He's
entire plate. There we are. You'd think that's Cloud's story done and dusted.
end the game. Game over.
That's a short episode, guys. But no, the he wakes up. in a bed of flowers falling through a church roof. And this is where we meet Aerith Gainsborough officially. Um, we recognize her
Our flower girl.
as the flower girl from earlier on in the game. She's very much grateful that she's been saved beforehand. She's able to go back to the Sector 5 slums. Um, and then basically it's just said, I need a bodyguard. I'm going to hire you as my bodyguard. Cloud doesn't really have a say in this, but just is along for the ride.
Yeah, in Clyde's situation, I just to touch back with, you know, Shinra knew Avalanche were going into Sector 5 to blow up the reactor, and it was almost broadcast on TV, like, look at the terrorist group. They're
That's
coming
it.
here
Yes,
to
it's all like the media of Shinra are basically just like, right, that's Avalanche. Avalanche are scumbags. They are out to do nothing but bad things. And look, they blew up
exactly.
a prototype weapon that wasn't even meant to be there, and they spun it so like Avalanche are always going to be the bad guys, regardless.
Absolutely. They are a terrorist organization. Look, there's these people, civilians have lost their lives because of this explosion, their actions and stuff. So Cloud is then separated from that, or for now, essentially, in this sort of quiet other slum in another sector with Earth. Um,
I mean, it's not quite for
I-
very long because I think within
well,
like a minute of Aerith joining the party, the doors are kicked in, and this is where we meet
the
Reno.
yes, the
Reno,
Turks.
the Turks. I have the Turks written down here as like bounty hunters and like enforcers for Shinra. They're kind of not quite the grunts, but
Yeah,
they're not quite soldiers. They're this like in the middle, but they kind of operate in their own, on
I
their own
don't.
terms, basically.
You put it in a good way. I don't know where they are in the hierarchy, but they're
Hmm.
very much they're separated amongst themselves to just a bunch of unique characters who all seem to wear suits.
That's it. Yes. No. Like Reno comes in. He basically is just like he knows who Aerith is. He has this like he has an agenda with her, and Aerith is just like, I'm not going with you. Go fight him, Cloud. So straight away we are thrust into a he is a boss essentially. I would say a mini boss really, but he has a
Yeah,
full
in
health
many
bar. He has a full health bar. He has like two phases, and he does some serious damage with his He
it's
has
like
the electric batons. Yeah,
yeah,
there. He was hard work to be fair. Um, but like every boss has a way around them. He is eventually dispatched, and this is a lot of just walking around through the slums. I think there's a few more moments where we have to deal with Shinra. We have to deal with a few of the ghost specters again. Um, a lot's kind of going on in this small space of time, and Cloud just kind of has to be reactive. Really, he's just like, well, I'm here now. I may just make the most of it. So we do get a lot through this the slums, a lot of the wasteland. A lot of it's all very derelict. Aerith
yeah.
is very much like Shinra did something, and basically there's nothing there. Nobody lives here anymore, so they're kind of in the gaps between slums, really. So we do work our way through back into Sector 5. The news reports say they are talking about how Avalanche have come in. They've just caused chaos and anarchy. They've destroyed the sun lamps. They've destroyed this piece of like high tech piece of kit and just all around causing a bit of disruption here. So Aerith kind of is like the calming presence in what has gone wrong in a lot of this at the minute.
She is. She is a massive comic presence. I think when you talk to other NBCs, they all know Aerith. And Aerith's like, "Oh, thanks for helping out at the school day."
That's
Is
it. Yeah, the first thing, like the first thing we do is we go to the orphanage, and they're like,
yeah,
"Aerith, you're
yeah.
such a good help," and it's like, Jesus, what you doing throwing in with this lot, like,
It's almost angelic. You land on this bed
uh-huh.
of flowers, and she's there to take care of you, and you're alive. And then there's all these orphans that love her, and or you meet your mum. In this
Well, the
sort
mum
of
doesn't like you, but yeah,
well, yeah,
everyone
yeah,
likes
but she
you.
lives in this like pretty house surrounded by gardens and flowers, which is growing underneath a plate city. It's serene, weirdly
Well,
serene.
that's it. Yeah, and it's like it's nearly mirrored from. when we're in the Sector 7 slums and Aerith is, or Tifa is trying to get you to do all these side missions to like build rep and, make more money.
Yes.
Whereas Aerith is like, I do this to help people. Let's go and do all this stuff because it's the right thing to do. It's such a
Oh,
like
look at
it's
that.
such a similar
Morals.
it's such a similar setup in terms of like how you progress that story, but the motivation is entirely different. And Cloud's just like, I just want to go home.
But you talked about Cloud earlier. He's like, I just want to get paid. And I was like, I'll pay you in a date.
I'll pay in hugs
You-
and kisses, basically. That's how she like.
Yeah.
It's so airy fairy, yeah. And he's like, I don't care. I just want to get back to. I want to get back to Sector 7. So we kind of meander through that. We do an awful lot of missions for the orphanage, for the Muggles, that little gang of children. If I remember, that's the name of them. A lot of
Yeah,
stuff in like
probably.
a lot of stuff in the quarry. There's a few extra missions there where you kind of have to go wandering around looking for lost children again on that one. We sort of come back to retire for the day, and then this is where we met the other Turk. We meet Rude.
Rude. The old
Rude was
bald one.
he was a tough boss because again we're still relatively early, like low level at
Early
this point in the
doors.
game.
Yeah.
Like it's not a very we're about 7 or 8 chapters into this game at this point, but we're still not as massively high leveled as you'd hope to be. Um, and he does an awful lot of like sleep attacks, basically. So if you if he puts Cloud to sleep, who's going to deal the most damage? Aerith, who basically is a mage type fighter,
She's got a long
can
stick.
can't do an awful lot of damage until she becomes pretty high level as well. And she can start like applying more and better materia to her. Anyway, I
Yeah.
realize we haven't said what like to anyone who hasn't played Final Fantasy. Materia is like objects that you gather and you can like embody it into your swords or your items or your armor, and kind of grants you more abilities that are like fire, ice, wind, healing, reviving, that kind of thing. Like so, um,
And
we
it's
haven't met.
exactly the same as the original. You see, equipping materia, exactly the same. They didn't
Okay,
change a
but
single thing.
I don't think we've had Aerith in our party, like officially in our party. She's just the NPC who's with you, so there's not really been
Yeah.
much of a chance to actually apply any buffs to her at this stage. So I thought the Rude fight was quite tough, especially like if you get caught in an uppercut of his, or even just in like the trail that he leaves, can do a lot of damage to Cloud. But we
Definitely.
can eventually, when we do eventually dispatch him, we go back to the house. Aerith is like, right, you're staying here. That's fine. Aerith's mom's like, no, you ain't.
She has different ideas, and
So
she
we
tells you
kind
as
of,
such.
well, that's it. So we go to leave. We sort of cut it to the middle of the night. Cloud goes to sneak out of the house and we have another stealth mission. This is the one where like Aerith has been out prior and has like put bottles all over the floor, and you have to sneak and walk around in the path, otherwise she'll wonder why you've got out of bed and put you back to bed, basically. So you have to then try it again.
It's almost weird when you say it out loud.
Oh
Um,
no, that's it. It's so anime. It's so anime. So we get out of that. We leave as we're leaving the house. Aerith's mum's like, don't ever come back. Don't ever speak to her again. But you open the door and you go to leave, and Aerith's like, "Heidi ho, neighbor, I'm gonna come
Yay!
with you anyway." So
You're still my bodyguard.
she loves to hang around anyway. She just wants to kind of. I don't really know what her motivation is. She just is like, well, I've paid for your service, so I'm gonna make the most of this anyway. So I'm gonna help you get to Sector 7. We go through the underground tunnels. We fight a few more weird and wonderful creatures, and then there's a few puzzle elements on this as well, where we have to rejig the cranes, like
Yes.
the big hand cranes, and you have to raise and lower Aerith on these platforms to get her to drop a ladder for you. Essentially, they were quite nice, quite refreshing, but the fights in between is what I primarily being a fighting game is what frustrated me the most about this, was that I just wanted to do the puzzles, and the the
These
the
things getting in the
fighting
way.
the fighting keeps getting in the way. So we crack on with that. We do a little bit more puzzling and fighting. Just as we're about to split up, Anyway, we actually get the notification on the screen that Aerith has left the party. We're gonna go. A cutscene is activated, and next thing you know, all we see is a chocobo carriage
Yeah.
with Tifa all dolled up.
D-
So we're
like
kind
you've
of,
never seen her.
well, this is it. Then we spend this whole time chasing the chocobo and the carriage, wondering what's going on with Tifa, and this takes us nicely into the wall market.
The Wool Market.
This was a great, in my opinion, I think this was a great resection of the game anyway. But then it's a big, massive narrative shift because we've gone from this like massive eco-terrorist plot to stop this evil corporation from being an evil corporation to why is Tifa dressed up? There's obviously something, but this is the genuinely they are like, well, Tifa's all dressed up. There must be something wrong. Don't you want to know why she's all dressed up? And Cloud's like, not really. So I feel as if like Cloud's a side character in his own story. At this point, he doesn't really know what's going on, but he feels compelled
Yeah.
that he has to go off and investigate this. So it turns out that Tifa has volunteered herself to become potentially a bride of Don Corneo, who's like the slumlord mobster of Market Town or
That's
Wall
about it.
Market,
Wool
sorry.
Market. Yeah. That's it.
We go up to the house. The grunts are basically like, no, he
No
has
entry.
particular tastes. Yes, no entry. You need to go and get permission from like the three elders of the town to get it to have a chance of even getting into the house. Then, so this is again we have a little bit of around the town. We then meet the three lords. Who do I have them written down as? Is Rodea, Chocobo Sam, and Madam M.
That's them. Well,
They
I mean,
are three eclectic characters, if nothing else.
Wool Market is quite a
So
place.
Wall Market's incredible. It's such like this like El Dorado or not El Dorado. It has this very yeah, I don't even know what it is. It's this kind of like lawless society. Basically, everyone's a bit kind of a bit mad, a bit of a swindler. They all kind of are in for themselves, basically. So we go to all these elders of this town. All of them are like, well, no, I'm not really. Don Corneo's got particular tastes, and neither of you are going to fit the bill, basically. We do eventually come across Madam M, who has a sort of change of heart, um, and says, "Right, I'll grant you permission if you be my champion and fight in the Colosseum." And
Yeah.
I'm sitting here thinking, it's like, hold on, what? So now I got to go and just do a boss rush, which is essentially what it is. It's like you be nominated as their champion, and Cloud and Aerith have to then go and do tiers
An
of
arena.
like an arena
Yeah.
battles, basically, and we complete. You go through the gauntlet, you beat the last boss, and then basically you're told, well, that's not actually it. Don Corneo's decided that he wants to see you fight one more boss, and that's where we fight the Hell House.
Oh, and now I remember. I remember the Hell House for the original, but
Oh,
really remember you talking about this in the group chat.
it was.
It was
I just,
just
I just
brilliant.
think I went, why am I fighting a house? What the hell is going on? Um, Genuinely though, like hindsight is a wonderful tool in this podcast. It's probably one of the best bosses I've ever fought in any game ever. Purely for the fact it's so lunacy. It's such lunacy as a boss.
You're fighting a house with different stages. I mean, a
Oh
house
yeah,
has
it's
different
it's like
stages.
it's a full three-phase boss. Firstly, it's just the house that just shoots like teddy bear rockets out at you.
Of
Then it
course,
grows like rocket thrusters out and charges at you. Then it's got rocket thrusters and legs and can crawl on the walls and starts fighting you that way. But all the mean it can suck you into the house and do like three-quarter damage in one hit. It's colossally difficult, but I just I think I was just so for it. I think I was dying so much, but at that point I was like, this is such a good boss fight. This is such a cool boss fight. It's such a massive turn from just fighting bugs, dogs, and like soldiers.
and again, it almost fits the bill of Wall Market, where it's like totally different to Sector 7
Yeah,
slums.
I
It
have it
is.
written here in block capitals as epitomizes JRPG. So it's so out
You're
there, but it's
fighting
like
a
it's
house.
completely in the realm of it's completely in the realm of normal in this world, and everyone just kind of went, "Yeah, all right, sound. He's fighting the house." Even the announcers were like, they knew they were like, "Oh my god, he's fighting Hell House. This is gonna be a clash of the Titans, a battle for the ages."
Oh my god, the Hell House! Can't wait.
But then, like, the game, as if the game's gonna get any more bonkers at this point. So we beat the Hell
Yeah,
House. That then gets Lady or Madam M decides, right, I'll back Aerith to go and be Don Corneo's wife, or one of the candidates to be his wife. So then, Cloud's basically just told this is gonna take a while. Go do some side missions. You'll be notified, like you'll get a notification eventually to say she's ready. And I think it's a nice way to sort of slow the pace of the story down quite a lot, because you're forced then to go and do side missions, and you go back to Sam, and he basically goes, "Well, I have a couple of jobs for you." It's basically just go round up some chocobos, go round up some people who owe you money. Side mission, essentially just a bank of side
side
missions.
missions.
Yeah, we go through that. Aerith goes and has her makeover done. We then get word that Rodea wants to meet. Originally, he was completely indisposed. We couldn't meet him no matter what happened. We arrive at the honey lounge, the honey pot, I think it's called.
Yes, a honeypot, I think.
And basically then he goes, "I'll back you. I'll back you to be Corneo's wife if you have a dance off with me."
Seems totally normal and
So
sound.
we've just gone from the Coliseum boss rush to a QTE of a dance party.
And
I I'm
it was
conf-
full quick time.
I'm
Yep.
fully like not phased at this point by this, and Cloud can, Cloud may not understand when a woman's flirting with him, but he knows how to bust a move. So take from that what you will.
An unusual juxtaposition.
Not like it's a serious set of skills there, at least anyway. But then the laugh is we get drag Cloud
Yeah, from
because of this.
out of nowhere, but yeah, yeah, and you crush the performance mostly, maybe with your quick time reaction events of push the buttons here and dance this,
Yeah.
which
Like I
seems
just it was such a situation that I was just like, yeah, this doesn't surprise me anymore. We've done a lot of combat. We've done a lot of running around doing stuff. Why not let loose with a dance party?
well, I guess so. No, have a bit of a party time. The original Wall Market was going around doing different side quests to piece together an outfit for Cloud and a dress for Cloud and a wig. And
Oh,
but the
much
honeypot,
less.
the honeypot itself was interesting because you got access and there was no dance off, but there Cloud would like peek through. There was just six different doors or five different doors, and you'd be
Okay.
peeking through keyholes to see what was going on in that room. Or you go into one room and you get powdered up, or you go into another room and you'd be joined in a big bath by multiple bodybuilder men
Okay.
randomly. I was it was a random
Just
random place. Uh, I always preferred the dance off.
I
Or
know, I would believe
just
that. So, well, this is it. We get Cloud gets dolled up. Aerith has all had her makeover. So we go back to Corneo's house. The grunts at the door are like, "I don't know why you really want to do this. Like, I don't know what made you so desperate to do this, but go ahead. Like, follow the signs. You have to follow the rooms to the very end of the corridor, whatever it is." Next thing you know, Titha and Cloud are gassed, and that is the end of that
ugh,
chapter.
flip's
You know,
sake.
always the way. So so the guys all wake up in this dungeon room essentially. Cloud, I believe, if I remember correctly, gets taken away. He's the one that Corneo has picked to be, he wants to have a look at her and potentially get married to him then. So this is the first time that we've actually gone away from Cloud and we're actually controlling Tifa and Aerith at this point.
Yeah.
So they get loose. They start to run riot around the house. They're beating up all of Corneo's men. It's a relatively small section. You know, you
I,
go up
I This is the first time
through.
Aerith and Tifa meet as well.
That's it. And Tifa's just or Aerith is just like, oh my god, you're Tifa. Cloud is obsessed with you, and it's just like Aerith's or Tifa's just like,
Who
I
are
have no
you?
idea who you are, but you're probably. I think you're my best friend now. So they have a they have a great wee relationship. I think their character dynamic's so good for literally just meeting each other straight away. Like they're like, I don't like I'll fight to the death for you straight away. So we go around the house, we beat up all the henchmen. We eventually make our way to Corneo's room, and I think we have to watch the cinematic where Corneo is trying to like put the moves on Cloud, and he's trying to be all reserved and just
Yeah, he's trying
uh
to keep his
he's trying to be
cover.
very very coy about everything. He won't play along, and he runs around the room and he like slaps him up and down the place like. And eventually Tifa and Aerith bust in the door, and he's very much like, oh, there's three of you, this is going to be even better. He's like, Corneo's such a sleaze,
He's such
but
yeah,
his
yeah, yeah.
his character is so, oh, it's so good. And he's like, even these people who have just come in and beat up every single one of his henchmen, he's just like, well, hey,
Wow,
three women, it's a party now.
that's hot. Yeah.
um he then kind of gets the screw put to him,
Mm.
with the constant threat of having his nether regions obliterated by.
Calories.
So
Yes.
he divulges basically the entire enemy plan, that with the news going on with Avalanche and Shinra, that they're basically then going to use this as a media campaign to slander Avalanche. And I think Shinra's plan is to blow up the plate and destroy Sector 7 slums, and everything in between. Um, Corneo happily lays this information on, and it's a great piece of line. I'm only just remembering this now. I'm really glad I've just remembered this now. And he's like, "You're probably wondering why I'm telling you this," and it gives you a conversation option. It's just like, because you think that you've already won, and he's like, "Well," Bing presses the button, drops our trio of heroes into the sewers, and guess what? We've another boss fight.
Oh, right into it. No
Oh,
messing about.
no messing around. We're straight into Corneo's pet that lives in the sewers. This what Abzu, the big
I,
massive like
I couldn't
demon
remember his name, but I
dog
just
type
remember it's
character. Yeah.
yeah.
So this is a boss that we'll see a couple of times throughout the sewers. We may see it in separate sections at least anyway, but a relatively easy boss anyway. It's target one area, stagger him, and then do a lot of damage at this point.
Wail on him.
Um, that's it, yeah. So he we defeat him. He barrels through the wall, opens up a whole section of the sewers for us. Again, it's a similar situation of a bit of a dungeon crawl. We're going through room by room, picking up items that we need to get where we need to go. We do come across Jesse's skeleton key, um, which is the sort of
Yeah.
access all areas card. We also then have to do the pump house puzzle where we have to get all the water moved back and forth as well. So there's a lot going on in this section. We're kind of back into the norm of the gameplay here. I loved it. I thought it was really really good. The only problem I think that it has is the level design is so similar. Every room you go into, it's quite easy to get turned around. I think I did wander around longer than I should have because I was
Yeah.
like, oh, I haven't been here. Oh, maybe I have been here. But I think that's kind of part of the deliberate design of the levels, is that they want you to kind of feel lost and disoriented. But
I suspect so. Right. Yeah. Whether that comes across as well or that you feel that, I suspect it's maybe a attempt to make you question which direction you're going or
exactly,
yeah.
exactly. So we go through a bunch of more puzzles of this. It's all Cloud goes off on his own. We have to control Aerith and Tifa again to have to work out how electricity, either how the electricity is like split between all of the pump houses and stuff, so we can actually escape the sewers. But as we're doing that, we're being attacked by these like I've wrote them as brackets Ninja Turtles, but they have a name of the Sahagin. So they're these
Oh
like
yeah,
amphibious type creatures that
yeah. With the
they deal out a lot of damage, and they don't give actually don't give an awful lot. Oh, they have a lot of high resistance for their attacks as well, so they're quite difficult opponents anyway, and we're kind of bombarded with them for the most part. I think it's by the time you get to the very end, it triggers a cutscene where you're fighting them all back, and eventually you do escape the sewers. Um,
happy days.
and we escape the sewers via the train yard, the haunted train yard, which I
The
believe is
haunted.
another. I believe that's another completely shoehorned in section of game
The haunted train,
ish.
the train graveyard was in the original. It was
Okay.
indeed, and there was a few uh, puzzles to drive trains a little to push another train or instigate to clear a
Okay.
pathway by walking over a ramp or through other trains and out a different door to get through. So it was all just a big puzzle with
Yeah.
sort
So
of ghostly enemies and
they seem to have chopped and changed a little bit for if I remember correctly for this anyway. So you sort of start through the warehouse, and the one train
yes.
that you need to pass through has been raised up. So it's again of go to point A or go to point B via point Z, so you can go back to point A. It was quite good because like the ghosts are quite playful, and they're trying to like be aloof about everything really, but then there is a sinister overtone in that area. You feel as if like the ghosts aren't there by their own choice, like. So we
Yeah.
go through where the ghosts will allow us to go. Basically, they kind of drive where the player needs to go at this point. So we're into the control room, thinking that we'll lower the train, we'll go back, and then that'll be everything. We then have to fight the big massive specter, the big massive ghoul boss, which is basically just like it looks like a giant balloon. Like Joe actually really looks like. Have you ever seen
Yes.
The Nightmare Before Christmas?
Yeah, of course. Oh,
Oogie
the
Oogie Boogie
oogie
Man.
oogie.
That's
Yeah.
exactly it's exactly who it looks like, and it's exactly what that boss fight feels like. Just something straight out of a Tim Burton imagination, and he was quite, I say, tough, a long boss fight because Tifa and Aerith don't dole out a great. No matter how much you improve their weapons and stuff like that, even with the materia that you add into them, they don't dole out base damage particularly high. So you're heavily reliant on Cloud, but having to use your support guys as like ice or fire or anything that like anything that the bosses are
Yeah.
particularly
Era's
vulnerable
keeping you
to.
alive,
Yeah,
and providing the odd
Aerith was
spell.
Aerith was very good for reviving. Basically, that's pretty
Yeah.
much all I used her for actively was to revive players, just so I could just so I can keep my Phoenix Downs just for a rainy day. So we vanquish this spirit. We leave the warehouse. We navigate through the train yard again by like going into the cab, moving the train forward, moving the train back, climbing on top what we need to. Um, this piece is short lived relatively because we're straight into another boss fight, and I think that the pacing and when we of how we get bosses in this game is insane because there's a boss every half a section, really.
Yeah, to be honest, until you mentioned it, I totally forgot about the massive warehouse with the Oogie Boogie Man boss. I I just think the game's so fleshed out and expanded. I forgot about this whole section, and it's brought it all back to me. But yes, one more little boss fight, huh?
This one was this one was chaos because this looked like something straight out of again like the boss design is so different from everything that we face with all these weird and wonderful creatures and the ghosts and the specters and even just like the soldiers and stuff like that. This one looks like it was plucked straight out of a Dark Souls game. We had the
Yeah.
it was like a sword wielding chariot monster, and just it had like attacks where it was on the ground. Next thing it was on the sky, shooting like swords at you, and then the next thing it was like the third phase is it's a mix of the both, and it doles out some serious damage, and then it's firing out laser beams and stuff at you as well. So there's a lot going on this one. We do like we could talk forever and a day about tactics on fighting the bosses, but I think realistically we are gonna like we get these bosses beat. We do get out of the train yard. There's an awful lot of a commotion in the meantime because I think the aim of the game is to get out of the train yard, get back to Sector 7, and sort of help with the assault. There's a big like they've said that Shinra are basically going to come in and clean house and just wipe Sector 7 off the map and basically blame Avalanche for it. So we're in a bit of a rush to try and get past this so we can actually get Sector 7 saved.
Yeah. I know there's 8 sectors, and for Shinra to blow up a whole sector is a lot of people, right?
Absolutely, but they have no issue doing this, and like I think that's the big bad of it all is like the coldness of it. So just so they can win political points essentially. So we arrive back in Sector 7. We get a bit more intervention from these spirits and specters. Cloud and everyone then spends about 5 or 10 minutes hacking and slashing our way just to free up the path so we can get back to where we need to be. We're back with Wedge. Wedge tells us that everyone's fighting on the tower.
Yeah.
It's them and Shinra. So Wedge and Aerith, they go off. They're going to evacuate the slums. We go off Tifa and Cloud, going up tier by tier. We're just clearing off enemies and
You're climbing
bringing
this tower, right, to
bringing
get
the
to
fight
the
to
top.
Shinra. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's it. Every couple of levels that we clear, we get a little bit of a cinematic. I think the first cinematic we do get is Biggs, or yeah, Biggs is like shooting off a whole load of Shinra soldiers, and next thing you know, there's an explosion, and he gets thrown back. And we kind of just like that's the first time this game genuinely shocked me because I was like, they spent all this time going like, there's Avalanche, there's your core guys.
Yeah.
Biggs is kind of a bit more in a support role to Cloud throughout the game, but we do meet him and he basically gives you his like dying breath and he's like, oh yeah, you're pretty cool, like go do this, go take the fight to them, and then he pretty much just dies in your arms, or at least
It,
that's the implication of it anyway. He just stops
yeah.
talking to you and like like passes out really. So I was genuinely shocked at that. And then we go through a few more levels and the same thing happens to cinematic, and we've got Jesse with a grenade, and next thing you know, all you see is a big explosion, and I'm like, oh Jesus, we've lost Jessie
Not
too.
Jesse.
Who is, she's the one who's spent all of her time schmoozing Cloud really, and we didn't get and got she got nothing out from it.
I was waiting to go back that next night. We were going to hang out,
That's
she
right.
says.
So she says the same thing. She gives another kind of like, oh, just tell my mom like I love her basically, and then she just kicks it straight away. So this is quite like they were two quite big shocking moments in the game in pretty short space of time, really.
Yeah.
But what we're not able to do is we're not able to stop Shinra's plan. The play after we
You get to the top, and there's a bit of
there's
commotion up there.
multiple, yes. So we have to fight we have to. I
The,
think
the
my notes
Turks are
here is
back.
like the Turks are back and we're going full Metal Gear fighting. We're fighting a helicopter, everybody. Um,
Yes.
it's going back and forth. It's strafing. It's
Behind
firing
you.
missiles at you. It's just if there's ever a Metal Gear Solid reference, that is it right there. Like we're fighting this machine. Eventually, it's not relatively difficult. It's I think Cloud has one leaping attack, and if he's
Yeah.
high enough attack, can do a lot of damage in like 3 swipes. Uh, Once the helicopter goes down, we have to then fight Reno and Rude at the same time.
Your two favorites.
That's tough. That's very tough.
Yeah, because it's not
I will
like
say that.
it is literally the two bosses you fought before at the same time.
Yeah, exactly.
You know,
And it's just it's figuring out how to divide and conquer on them because Reno is quite fast paced and does an awful lot of radiant damage, whereas Rude is so clinical and precise with his attacks that yeah, it took me a long time to find an appropriate pattern to get working. I basically just had Barrett run constant barrages at them and Tifa to heal, and basically I just was like just hack and slash until one of them staggers,
Yeah.
basically.
And that's it. You
Um,
don't have Earth at this point because Earth has been asked to go save Barrett's kid, Marlene,
that's
I
it.
think.
Yeah, so she has a
So,
small section of like walking
sh-
around the slums and guiding everyone as well. So there's a
yeah,
lot going on in this section anyway.
and you don't have access
Um,
to her healing.
no, that's it. She's pretty much like the one woman band at this point. So that's it. Like we dispatched the bosses eventually. They do escape. They've decided that they're not. I leave. They escape in another means of transportation.
Pause moment.
Yes.
There was a freeze there, possibly on my end. Um, but we just go again from they escape. I think you were saying.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Sorry.
Okay. No, 3, 2, 1. Yes. So we can't stop Shinra from blowing up the plate.
No.
The our lovely Turk companions are have all decided this is not our fight. It's not worth dying for. They make their escape at least anyway, and Tifa, Cloud, and Barrett are left on this falling plate. Basically, they're like there's a lot of
Yeah.
falling going on in this game anyway. Um, they grapple hook their way to safety eventually, which actually being said, there's a big massive like graphical change in this cinematic. It nearly goes like hyper realistic, nearly like pure cinematic. It looked incredible. So we kind of are back in the slums there in the middle of the chaos and anarchy of everyone's gone into sector, everyone's sort of fled to sector 5. We're running the evacuation and everything that way. We can't find Wedge, so Barrett is like, right, we need to go back. So we go back basically the same way we did with Cloud and Aerith. We back through the underground tunnels. The
Underground.
handy part about this, all the crane puzzles are pre-done for you at this
You've done
point.
them.
So it's a straight run basically back to Sector 7. Um, we find Wedge's cat, have a wee look around the slums, see what we can get going, and basically there's a shift in the ground. Barrett falls through, cut to black, and then we're in another section. This is the first time now we take over Barrett as an individual character. At this point, I still don't have a solid opinion on Barrett. I still am just kind of like, he's a bit. I don't know. I didn't like his character, and I'm still a bit on the fence about him anyway. Uh,
And this is new. This
so
does not happen in the original either.
this entire section seemed a bit added in as well because we do an awful lot of going through a Shinra underground base. Uh, we start fighting a few creatures that we've never seen before, and we start putting A and B together that Shinra might be doing a little bit more than just stealing energy from the planet.
It might be up to something.
This is where we meet. After a while, we do meet up again with Tifa, and this is where we come across the failed experiments. This is where the game kind of takes a big, massive like. It turns out Shinra are worse off than much worse than what we had anticipated. Um, yeah, there's some new enemies that are science experiments gone wrong and have escaped.
Yes, yes, and Mako is a wonderful thing for when it's
That's it.
being
Yes, so
used for
they're using it
science.
for nefarious purposes. So we come across a horde of them, and there's the big bad on that one. So we come across that, we dispatch them, we find a cloud comes in at the last minute to save the day. We
Comes in
find
clutch.
Wedge. That's it. We find Wedge. Um, in the midst of all this, in the evacuation of Sector 7, Shinra officials have come looking for Aerith, and Aerith has made a deal that she'll go back to Shinra willingly in exchange for everyone not being murdered or blown up.
Yes, yes, and she's
It was
handed Bart's child Marlene over to her mum, I think. But
That's
and
right, yes. So we go back to Sector 5, we go back to Aerith's mother's house, who we find out is not Aerith's mother.
mm,
Aerith is of a particular lineage, we'll say.
she is. She's an ancient, one of the last of a few race of these ancient Cetra people, and mysterious folk. And her mum died years ago, and this lady took essentially adopted her. Um,
Yeah. Well, this is it. So we start to hatch up the gang starts and then hatch this plan. We find out that they find out that Aerith is not there, that we need to go back and get her, but where do we need to go? We need to go back and we need to take the fight to Shinra, basically. That's how we're gonna get her back.
let's do it.
Um who is the one person who would know how to get into Shinra undetected? The big
Who
sleazebag,
knows? Who
Don
knows?
Corneo
Oh, Don
himself.
Cleo. I thought it would have been Cloud, said he worked at Shinra, but you're right, Don
You
Corneo.
would think. So Don Corneo, the hunt is retracing steps and going back through where we were at. A lot of back through the sewers, and this time we do have another companion in one of the main henchmen who denied us access at the start. Young Leslie.
Young Leslie.
Young
Oh,
Leslie.
yes.
He Don Corneo. He tells us Don Corneo's gone into hiding, but it's okay. I have the key, and I'll take you exactly to where he is. Um, Now there's an awful lot of hijinks around this. The key gets stolen. We then have to fight Abzu in a second phase again. This time we have a bit more moving parts on this. We had like the water jets and the sewage pipes that are all starting to explode around them as well. So there's a few more screws and spanners in the works to this boss fight, at least anyway, this next phase. Um, but again, Abzu's not a particularly difficult boss. Uh, it's just frustrating. It's just one of those ones. If you miss time or don't use the right gear against them, he'll make you pay, and you then stuck back having to go back to the start of that fight. Then
And at this stage, I'm desperate to get to that Shinra tower.
yes, so we meet Corneo.
I'm
Corneo kind of gives us the route in which to get in undetected, and it's via a bunch of other ruined sectors, at least anyway. So this is the point with the game where it's like, right, that's it. This is the end game. No way back. We're not really messing around here.
There's going to be no more free
No
travel
more
around
free roaming.
Midgar.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes. So once you're in the start of the end, anyway. So this next section basically tons of grappling, tons of fighting, a lot of running from the next big Shinra bot, the big Valkyrie drone that kind of follows. It does follow you around for the bulk of the map anyway. It's a lot of running and hiding and ducking and dodging. Uh, as you sort of traverse that arena, eventually it does just lock you in that one central platform, and we do have to fight this massive drone, this massive robot that Shinra are just throwing everything they have at you in terms of tech. I think this one is like you fight it with like some sort of satellite guided missile, isn't it? It's very
Yes, yes. It's like a use of the environment, or what it gives you is the environment, and to weaken it,
yeah.
because you can't rely on Tiva's punches alone.
It's pretty non-explained. It's like, oh no, like make it stand in this one spot long enough, and like a laser from space will shoot it down. So we do get our ways. We defeat that. That gets us back onto the main plates anyway. This enables us to then sneak. I say sneak. Casually meander into the Shinra parking garage, to which we're met with hordes of enemies.
Here we
And
go.
again, it's another dungeon crawl through the lower levels of the Shinra facility. Uh, I think the characters do sort of notice this as we go through and even get to the lobby and the higher levels, that we've actively been allowed to walk through and nobody has arrested us. Nobody has come and shouted at us or done anything like called the guards. We're then met with a random Shinra exec who kind of just says, "Right, come with me this way. You've been requested."
Yeah.
And this is where we meet Domino, who is the
Is,
um
is he the
he's the president.
mayor?
He's the mayor
Or
of Midgard. Yeah, that's right.
yeah.
Who also moonlights as a sleeper cell for Avalanche. He's the one who is the inside man who's feeding all the information out. Basically says, like, I'm the mayor of Midgard, but uh, Shinra are the guys who hold all the cards. They make all the decisions. I'm merely just the guy who is seen for the public eye. I have no say in this, but he agrees. He knows he's helping anyway. He knows what to do to take down Shinra and what it is they're up against. He gives you a contact to go and meet to get the access card because we needed to use the to access the upper floors where the R&D is. That's where Aerith and Hojo are all holed up anyway.
Yes.
Um, as if this game couldn't get any more mental. Where we meet the contact and he's like, "Yeah, I believe your story, but I don't believe that you're as strong as you say. There's a fight simulator. Go and
Prove
do
yourself.
prove yourself." So something that I think feel as if should be pretty entry level into this game. It's like, right, no, go and fight a whole ton of enemies and machinery and big baddies, and we go and do that. That's fine. We get the access card. We'll go up to the higher levels here. This is where we sort of meet. Again, we're sort of cutting between cinematics of Aerith and Hojo, sort of talking about the ancients' ancestry and what we could do with that, with what Hojo could do with the ancients' blood and how he can make that work in his research. And
The promised land.
he has an awful
Mako.
lot of motives aside from Shinra's endgame, at least anyway. So we do
Yes.
eventually, like, we catch up to them on that floor. We do spot Hojo going into the secret meeting room, to which then Cloud or Tifa or one of them has to crawl into the vents to then spy on the meeting. And it's all the high level Shinra execs are all there, and they're all talking about how they're going to make millionaires and they're all going to be going to the promised land, and how Mako is like grand and made them so much money, and how one of the people at the meeting talks about how this mysterious person is just walking through the building and he's very aloof about the details, and everyone's like, "Oh no, that's not true because he's dead. Like, how could he's not in? He can't possibly be there." There is an awful lot. There's a hell of a lot of
Is
we do we do then sort of are able to catch up with Hojo and sort of trap him and go, right, give us Aerith. We're gonna take Aerith back, and he's like, right, yeah, you can have her, and then he releases
Red
spec-
13, is it?
the
Yeah.
specimen HO512, which is
Oh. Oh.
the big Hulkin kind of Mr. X meets Nemesis type uh monster, which I feel as if just the game's
Why,
gone full
Hojo?
Resident Evil. Game's going full Resident Evil at this point, where we've just got monsters experimentation that has just been left to run riot anyway. So we do dispatch him with the help of Red 13. Red 13 being another Shinra experiment,
Being a
we think.
talking dog wolf
Wolf Dog, yeah,
thing?
who's very well spoken the entire
Very
time.
well. Very refined.
Um, like as I've highlighted this in my notes. The game's gone very very Resident Evil, as like beyond this section we have to go to all of the labs. We have to go through like 4 tiers of labs, but we have to go between Aerith and Tifa to activate the levels for Cloud Red, and Barrett to actually navigate each of the sections. So there's a lot of back and forth and a lot of sort of puzzle based work in that regard, but it does
Yes.
take a bit of a it does nearly take a bit of a heart. It's so different, like in terms of the tone of the game, but we know that we have to do it um to get up to Hojo and to get up to the top floor of Shinra, basically.
You're in this guy. You've gone through the Shinra building and the official offices and things like this, and you're in Hojo's world. This mad scientist who you didn't really meet or know anything about before now, but he is doing all these experiments and is he in his own world up here on these particular floors where no good is happening.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, so we go through all of these sections, and this is where we get to the very end, and we get to the very last section, and this is where we meet the Swordipede, big floating uh
Oh yeah, I was like the
sword,
what?
the sword
And then I
centipede.
exactly
Yeah.
know what you mean. Yeah, I can
Now,
picture it.
I will say, not a very difficult boss by any stretch of the imagination, because it's done over like different characters as well. So it's pretty much dispatched quite quickly, but it felt like a bit of a gimmick of a boss.
Slap it out the way.
So we do a
I
bit
think it
more
was there because it was
scaling
in
of
the
the
original.
buildings. Oh, really? Okay.
So they just we gotta fit this in.
But
Here you
yeah,
go.
but it's so fleeting a moment in this. It didn't feel that important anyway. But they were like, it felt
Yep.
like they had to put some sort of big bad guy into it at least anyway. So we do a bit more scooching around the levels and stuff like that. Um, and then we come
Working our
across
way up.
we are working our way up, and we end up following a little blue footprint trail of just goo around the Shinra buildings. That leads us into the president of Shinra's office. There's been a bit of a scuffle. We can hear voices outside. We get talking to the Shinra president, who's been thrown off the side of the building. Um, there's a
Flip
bit of
say.
a there's a bit of a conversation, a bit of a scuffle. Um, but El- this is where we do sort of see Sephiroth here again. Sephiroth does he kills Barrett or he doesn't kill Barrett? I can't like this is where the game kind of gets a bit skew
Things
with here.
get weird, and this is where it's probably important that Love It isn't here because this is super different from the original.
Okay.
Obviously, um, okay, in the original, you have to bust out of a prison on one of the floors, and you work your way up to the President Shinra, and you just see Sephiroth's sword through President Shinra. He's President Shinra's just there dead with
Okay.
Sephiroth's sword. You never see Sephiroth at all. But this sword is just there as a God. That's Sephiroth's, but
Okay.
he's dead. Um, but with this, weird stuff's going on. You got these things. I think Red 13 is trying to narrate a bit about you about these things called whispers, the specters, and they are Bart is killed, but then is not killed because of the whispers, because the whispers are trying to control fate. And it's like,
Yes, the
what is
whispers
going on?
are like it's
And
like a
it's
sacred
not,
timeline. Yeah.
yeah, things cannot stray from how things are lined up to be. And Barrett being killed is not part of that timeline. So he's saved or something. You
Yeah,
know,
so like there's a lot going on, and like even with Sephiroth being there and killing Bard, it nearly because like the boss that comes next then sort of implies that what is happening isn't actually real at all because
yeah,
when you fight the Geneva Dreamweaver, everything kind of has this warped sense of reality. It becomes like this Devil May Cry type boss where you're in like this warped version of the Shinra building, nearly in another dimension. It's so one of the single hardest bosses I've ever had to fight. Like it's in terms of the amount of times I had at that, only for it to go like with 1% of health left, and then go, oh no, it's killed me.
Yeah,
and then you're stuck having to go through all those phases again. Uh, just but as you say, like they then do this whole thing about the fates bringing him back or like stopping him from dying at least anyway. Um, but
which is
yeah,
all
so
you. I
that's
was
it.
shocked, but
I was kind of like still going. I still am very much like I don't really know what happened. Even when I was like looking at the guide just for reference for plot points, I was like, oh, I don't really know what's happening here. Uh, I'm just kind of right. You fight the Jennifer Dreamweaver, you kill it, and everything seems all right with the world again. Cloud is convinced that Sephiroth is like here and is about, so he goes sort of on the chase. And there's a few moments where they clash swords, and Sephiroth says like he basically is like constantly giving like foreboding whispers of like the future, like whatever, like I'm gonna change the future, I'm gonna like take hold of the fates, and he has this idea that he's gonna be better than what fate has in store for him, like, so he's very cryptic in all of his messages anyway. But
yes.
as quick as he appears, he disappears again, and then we end up having to fight
So,
the
so
Shinra
is this
VP, just the
this
Rufus,
is
yeah.
Rufus? This is the President Shinra's son who just claims ownership. Now that no, oh, Dad's dead. I'm in charge now.
That's it. I'm in charge. And he just appears with him and his dog, and he's like,
He's flipping gone.
yeah, like, oh, you're the soldier that's causing all this hassle and trouble. And Cloud's like, I don't know who you are. Just like leave me alone. I've got other things going on. Now Rufus he's a great boss because he has like the pistol and the coin,
Yeah,
and it shoots like the big laser and stuff as well. Like he deflects a load of bullets and stuff. So, but you're fighting Darkstar the dog and Rufus at the same time. So I remember when I was first playing this, I actually had to play like we'll have this boss with a guide, and it's very much defeat the dog first,
get the
and then
dog.
Rufus. Yeah, defeat the dog first because he can do more damage than Rufus can, and Rufus is quite easily controlled by just your own movements, whereas the dog is quite an erratic um, character at the most part. Um, so eventually we do sort of dispatch the two of them. He gets in his helicopter and flies away to safety. Anyway, he's not for dying today. Anyway,
He's not dying for this cause.
well that's it. Yeah, we have a few more clashes with Sephiroth, either in in real life or in Cloud's head. It's kind of it doesn't really play it. It either leaves you constantly guessing, or it's left to the imagination of the player that way.
Yes, yes, and I almost feel like I want to replay this last chapter to catch up now that we're talking about it. But with that, with President Shinra killed and the new president escaped, and Sephiroth Barrett not killed, you gotta get out of here
Oh yeah,
at this stage.
absolutely. And this is another one of like the buildings blowing up, it's collapsing all these floors. So we're kind of like cascading through the floors here. But what else is also cascading through the floors? Another Shinra bot. This is where we have to fight the Arsenal. And the Arsenal was bloody tough because it's like every phase destroys it more, but every phase as you destroy it destroys more floors, sets things on fire. I think the last phase is basically just you're in a corridor of flames,
Yeah, yeah. You
and
destroy like different parts of it, but yeah,
basically you have to kill it before it like charges at you or self-destructs or something. It is just mental. And you're just having to fight this and like count down, like while everything's sort of counting down and blowing up around you. So eventually, like you've blown everything up and you've got made your way back down to the ground floor, and you're sort of surrounded. And next thing you know, you've got Barrett, Tifa, and Aerith in their little pickup truck. They just come raking around, and
what
after
does Cloud find for himself?
he gets on his wee motorbike, and then
Of
we're
course he
straight into
does.
like we're pretty much straight into that next chapter of just but it's just it's again it's more hordes of enemies. It's more heavy duty robots, and
It,
it's
it
another boss
is.
fight as well. This one's a bit different because it is just like you can't really control the pace in which you're driving. You kind of have to drive around this boss mech. Um, and in terms of what comes next, this seems really disjointed because you fight this Shinra bot, it blows up. Then all the fates sort of start to swirl around the Shinra tower.
Now, at this point, you in the original, you've been slashing left, right, and it's like your trip with Jesse earlier and fighting Rush and the road, maybe fighting a few things, but you fight like a bot, and then that's it. Boom, Midgar, you're free.
Saved, yeah.
Yeah, you escape.
So
Not the
this then
case in the
obviously
remake.
takes a massive, massive shift then because the tower is covered in these specters and they all start to come swarming towards you. Sephiroth has opened this portal at the end of the highway. He's like goading Cloud to like join him and challenge destiny and control your
Yeah,
own destiny. And Cloud's just kind of like, no, what, like I think Cloud knows that he's kind of in a bit over his head at this point, but he's just like, but what you're doing is fundamentally not right. So he naturally is going to oppose Sephiroth anyway. Um, he goes through this portal. He's like, well, whatever. I'm going to do this. I'm going to be head honcho, control my own fate. I'm not going to let anyone tell me what to do. This kind of leaves the whole party at the edge of this, like the precipice of this, like utter destruction behind them and the complete unknown in front of them. And you kind of chat to everyone, they all give you this, and Red 13 is just like, well, I've only just met you, but like, I don't know, let's go. Like, I guess we'll have to. And because I did this so many times because I just kept dying, that it was, oh, I've never challenged the fates before. I've never tried to confront my destiny. Um, and this last section is basically just like this massive QTE of like not falling down this broken bit of highway. And then what we have to do is fight these like manifestations of destiny in these three whispers. And
yeah.
the three whispers all have different abilities. Like one's fire, one's electricity, and one's like
These elements,
swords,
right?
attacks. They're all elemental creatures and stuff. So as we're fighting them, they're getting killed as a child. As yeah, so we're fighting them, and then you're fighting this big, massive elemental whisper, which takes up in the background, takes up the entirety of the background, but will somehow sometimes be in damage. The phases on that, I think I went through this is 6 phases of this boss fight, and you're basically just fighting
Huge.
you're fighting the same bosses over and over again, and you just it's divide and conquer in different situations and different like party configurations as well.
Let me tell you, this is a
Um,
long fight.
it is.
It
I
takes
actually had to drop the difficulty to get this done.
which is, I think that's fine because I had to. I'd said to Caroline, um, "Look, this game's about to finish. Where do you see this ending?" And I had no idea any of this was happening, and it was like 2 hours later. Than
Oh, serious?
I was like, "Oh, it's over. She's asleep." Uh, you know, I thought it was, oh, we're at the end. We're on the motorcycle. This is it. They're in their little
Yeah.
car.
Well,
No,
listen, as we're fighting these phases, and they kind of like each time that the phase of the biggest one in the like the big background fade gets like destroyed, he sends like a shockwave through the party, and we get to see snippets of like the future and stuff. So, uh, Red 13 sees like Red 13 running away from stuff. Tifa sees meteors coming down onto Earth, and she's like, they're questioning whether or not they see that as real, and it's like this is what is going to come if we fail, basically. So, um, they go off, they fight the fates, they dispatch the three on the ground, and the one uh sort of pulling all the strings, really. Uh, but then there's no rest basically because as soon as we're finishing that, we're straight into Sephiroth comes in, gets the jump on Cloud. Um, and there's a lot to say about the Sephiroth fight, the music, the pacing of that fighting. It's just so. You've just come off the back of this gargantuan fight with the Fates, and then Sephiroth has come in basically just to try and uh just assert himself basically in this, and he's like, "Well, I'm going to take control."
It, yeah,
Um, now I maybe because I dropped the difficulty to get past the Fates, I kind of didn't expect to fight Sephiroth so quickly, so I flew through that boss fight basically just pumped him with full of damage and elemental damage. Um, and then basically he has his big wing. He's fighting. You're throwing a lot of sword attacks at him, and then basically we beat him. And I don't really remember an awful lot. And even the guide I was using as the for my notes was like, yeah, you beat Sephiroth, and then you're kind of left back on Midgar, and you're like, well, the fight's not over. Let's go stop him.
and that's it. But that's the end of the game. You know,
That's
the
it. Yeah.
fight. Let's go stop him. Finn scene end. And you're left there thinking, I've just defeated fate as a construct or something, and all those whispers are gone and dealt with. Uh, you've defeated it. They're no longer controlling you or things, and
That's it. Everything now is like Cloud and the party's own decisions.
yeah. And
But
then
this is like we will sort of say we will touch on this like in the next section about like why this constitutes as a remake and like what is more reimagining than anything else. But I think this part in particular was very much like what makes this game stand out from the original was such an interesting concept. There is one thing I did mention, I forgot to mention actually as well. At the start of this, we get to see a scene um, with a dark-haired figure with a similar sword to Cloud, fighting a load of Shinra soldiers. And then when the game ends, he stood there. All these Shinra soldiers are dead or like fallen. And then as he's walking towards Midgar, we've got this moment where our troop are leaving Midgar, but neither exist or are aware of the other's existence. Like they're on two different timelines or planes of existence or something. I don't know. So it left. Now I've never played obviously the OG, so I have never gone beyond wherever this part of the story is. So I'm super keen. I know that they kind of touch base on this in like Crisis Core and then again in Rebirth, really.
but this is Zach. Uh, you know, and well, I'm sure we'll find out more about Zach. But what it is showing is a complete separation of almost timelines. You know, you've got okay, you've maybe separated from fate, but that's caused some kind of ripple or something because there's this other timeline seems to be
Yeah,
happening in parallel. So altering
I'm intrigued
destiny.
now. I'm very very intrigued because then that's it. Big orchestral flair, and then basically they cut to black. After they're like this like fight's not over. They're gonna have to take the fight to Sephiroth, and they're gonna have to. It's not just about defeating Fate anymore. It's about stopping Sephiroth and whatever he's got planned for his end game and his scheme for Midgar and beyond.
But hey, you beat him once.
Well, that's it.
How
We
hard
can
could it
beat him
be?
again. But like that's it. So the where that is us basically. That is the Final Fantasy VII remake plot. I say in a nutshell, that is quite an in depth look into that game. Anyway,
So, Tomahawk, that is quite an in-depth look at Final Fantasy VII Remake, and I've I've tried to touch on the differences with the original, and just thinking about what we've talked about. It's massively fleshed out. There's loads of different characters. I remember coming to the end thinking my characters are massively higher leveled and more powerful than they were in the original at this point.
uh huh.
You have all these summons and powers and things that you just never had, more advanced materia. than you did in the original at this point. But then fighting the arbiters of fate, the whisperers, and Sephiroth.
Yeah.
Sephiroth not being in the game at this stage. He's just a whisper and just a something talked about or a shadow. They it's sort of, and then the breaking of timelines, and it sort of opens up a, they could change anything about the story and it would be canon and fine because it fits this. But no, I'm just saying it's kind of like I
Yeah.
haven't gone through Rebirth yet, the second part, but it is just okay. Things are going to change here. Big
But
plot
this is it.
twist.
Like that's what I said sort of earlier. It's like the idea of this being a remake is technically true, but because of this final act, this whole like they've gone against the fates, they've like broken the canon essentially of it. The
Yeah.
game is free to kind of run a parallel story with a few wee twists, and I think this what like it works really well. But given the game a fresh look and a bit of creative license to like make a few changes or additions and flesh out the story and stuff, because it reminds me of like how they rebooted the Star Trek movies. Just like let me hold on to
Yes.
this. So rather than remake them, they made little plot changes and just went, "Oh yeah, but like this is a different timeline, so not quite the same." But it you can apply it sort of in the same way in Final Fantasy VII, at least in remake going into Rebirth, that they've made some conscious changes that they know that once this idea of the fates have been challenged and like destiny is in their own hands now, they can go into Rebirth and make these, play about with it a little bit, kind of maybe the story's not probably not going to change too much in terms of like where the final act is going to go, say for part 3 or like the final showdown. But it's interesting. It's a really really interesting aspect. Like it does make me. I do own Final Fantasy 7 for the PS4. It's on the hard drive. I'm just gonna like I want to just play it. I might just set it to like no encounters and just kind of put it through the story beats.
I would be interested to see if you just make Gar that the remake section, and just to see how
How
shorter it
short it is
is.
by
Yeah.
comparison. Yeah, I know. I can imagine it's so short because I think by the end of 39 hours into this
Yeah.
remake at least anyway. So I know that Rebirth is something around the 60 70 hour mark as well. So
Oh my goodness. I have a
yeah.
lot to play. You're gonna hear nothing but me for me in season
But
four of what we've been
this is
playing.
the laugh though. Like this is like we're gonna go into our S to D tier on this game now. I'm weirdly at this like point where I'm sitting going, I wasn't dying to go and pay 50, 60 quid for Final Fantasy 7 when it first came out. I'm not dying. I'm paying 60, 70 quid now for Rebirth. So
No.
we're going to be having this conversation in 4 years' time when Rebirth comes on
It's a
PlayStation
PS.
Plus, because I'll have then gone, that's about the right time for me to play this game. Like it's as good as it was, and it was a properly moving experience, a really like interesting narrative and a really really interesting like way a game is told in a story and the characters and everything in between that. But I'm just kind of like I'm not as passionate as a fan as I maybe like. It's a great game, but I'm just kind of going, I'm not gonna spend 200 quid to play 3 different games here basically.
No, and I don't think I'd pay that for any game, to be
Yeah.
honest. But that's part of my character of being slightly stingy. But it is a different game. It's not the original, and the original is 25 plus years old now, so
Yeah.
you're not gonna feel the same experience of that as it being in the 90s, and being wow, this is
I
incredible.
exactly, yeah.
So you can get that from other games now. Whereas this is, I think, a different game, but using characters of the universe uh, that people know, and that makes it really interesting. But I like it. I do, and it's. I can't wait to play Rebirth. I did wait. I didn't buy it day one because I didn't want to spend
Oh yeah.
£70.
96 days, 96 days until it went on offer. That's why I remember that right
That's it. That's
correctly.
it. Finally got 20% off or something like that. But
Incredible. That's it though. I mean, it's but the era of gaming that we're in, where these games are going to quite upwards now. Um, Not that it's going to put people off. Like fans of the franchise will pay that money anyway. But like me and you, well, you're probably
well,
more of a fan of the franchise than I am. I still won't pay. I probably won't play part two until it's free. That's kind of the situation I'm at with this. Um, I'll not be climbing over people to buy, and it's I've gone this long without never getting it spoiled anyway. I think I can go a couple more years without getting Rebirth spoiled for me.
I can't believe I haven't had any spoilers. I think people now I tend to avoid posts on social media if they talk about Rebirth too much, but I haven't seen anyone post spoilers. And I
Yeah,
think
no,
that the
it's
developers
interesting.
of the studio actually asked people to enjoy the game and talk about it, but don't spoil anything for people
Aye,
online.
that's it. But I think that's it. I think in a game like that, people are going to experience. Like, I mean, I've seen like bits in Spider-Man 2 creep up on social media. That game's not been out very long, and the spoilers are everywhere if you are
Yeah.
half looking for it. Whereas like Final Fantasy, no, it isn't there. But I think there's such a good fan base and a loyal fan base that's gonna ruin it for everybody because everyone's gonna play it at different places in time and in their lives. Like, but great, really great game, a really great experience. And as soon as it finished, I was just like, all right, what next? And that's when I sort
What
of bought the Final Fantasy VII remaster for the PS4 and just went, I'll get to that, probably.
you could do it in 39 hours that you spent
Yes, hopefully.
in Remake, the whole game. Um, but Tomahawk, this is a Game of the Month episode of our podcast. How does this play out from this point on? What do we do now?
Well, what we'll do, we'll give it our S to D tier. We'll place that and we'll put that ranking into the high stakes then. So
Okay.
everything I think without blathering on too much about like my thoughts and opinions on this because I've shouted into the void about that quite a lot about this game. It is sitting solidly at an A tier game for me. It's not an S tier because I'm. If it was an S tier, I'd have been playing it day one. I'd have been getting Rebirth day one. Um, Everything like the story's engaging, the characters are great, the graphics, the gameplay, the cinematics in that game look phenomenal. But me not being a massive fan of the franchise knocks it down from an S tier to an A tier. That's roughly where I stand on that. Then Cardinal. So what yourself? Where do we?
Do you know I'm almost inclined to agree because I think that I joked earlier about the old memes about in case of bankruptcy, Smash Final Fantasy VII
Ah,
remaster
that's it. Yeah,
remake.
yeah,
Um, and they've done that, and they've invested a lot in it. It looks brilliant and it runs brilliant, but I I do still prefer the original. Um, it's the same in the way it's the same plot points, the major plot points. But I am looking forward to replaying Rebirth because I want to know what happens.
yeah. Hmm.
Um, and but part of that is because I want to know what they've changed or what's different because I know
Exactly.
exactly what happens thoroughly in the original. In the original, I used to run a like an online forum for advice about what to do in the
Okay.
game if people were stuck or if they needed something. And then I used to have school friends pay me to take their memory card for a night, and I'd grind and level up their characters like 5 or 10 levels.
Oh,
Um,
brilliant.
£1 a level I charged back in the
It's
day.
not bad.
I know some of those kids had a lot
Very
of
good.
pocket money, um, and that didn't help my homework. But I just think I think A tier is excellent. I think it's a great
Hmm.
game, and I'll put it up there. But I have a feeling Rebirth is going to surpass it, and yeah, and I feel the original
From what I
surpasses it.
hear about Rebirth, I think it's always been touted it's been game of the year. It's always been, it's been in that conversation for a few months at least anyway. But we shall see.
And do you know what else? Which is unfair to say, it's Final Fantasy 16. I played. It came out since, and I played it
Hmm.
since. And Final Fantasy 16 was incredible fun to do. Like it was just
Yeah.
off the charts. I had a splendid time
Okay.
with that, and it was completely ridiculous. But I bought into it massively. But I look forward to going back to Final Fantasy 7 Rebirth. So
Perfect. Yes. No, but yes,
in
so you pointed out earlier, you were asking what is sort of next in terms of game of the month, and so yeah, what we would say, well, we'll announce this, and then we'll wrap everything up, and we'll there today. So, uh, next month's game of the month. So technically, it will be August's game of the month. We will get it out, I think, in quick succession. I'm hoping if we can get it. The plan is to maybe get it recorded at time of release the following week and have it released the following week after this then. So myself and Mr. Level Lover, we are going to be dissecting Tomb Raider Remastered Trilogy, specifically Tomb Raider 1.
fantastic
Um, Love has been powering through
classic.
it. He just absolutely, it is a classic. Uh, Such a peak, uh, peak like platformer, peak story, peak game, everything. So me and Lova are gonna dissect Tomb Raider 1 in its entirety, remaster, old school, the works. So super excited to be getting that one out in the into the open then. So keep an eye on the socials for that one then. So I think
Can't wait to
what
hear
we'll
it.
do is we'll get into the wrap up. We'll get everyone re-informed of where to find us on the internet, and then we'll call it a day. Then, Cardinal, how does that sound?
Let's do it. Okay, and that's it. Another game of the month of July wrapped up. That's been Final Fantasy VII Remake. Thank you very much for joining us on our pretty in-depth talk through the game.
Yeah,
If you haven't played it,
absolutely.
there it is. You don't need to now, but please do enjoy it. The Just to let you know, you can find us here at the High Scores High Stakes podcast on any of the social medias. We joked about it earlier, but do give us a follow. We're all on Twitter individually, and as the High Score, the Itch Scores Itch Stakes at sign, you can follow us there. And it's the High Scores High Stakes on Instagram. You can find us at highscoreshighstakes.com, and there's links to all the social medias there. And we're on TikTok for short video content and Instagram for some of the best or most artistic content. Really admire that social media manager on that site.
Doing
The
good.
you can find these on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you digest it from, but it'll go on YouTube as well for the video format. So with that, it's been great talking to you today. This has been High Scores, High Stakes. I've been Cardinal Smith. You've been
Tomahawk, as always. So they tell me.
bye bye.
Bye.